On the 9th of November 1985, Garry Kasparov defeated Anatoly Karpov to become the youngest world chess champion in history. That victory marked the beginning of Kasparov's reign. And it's a good reason for us to look more deeply into the life of a grandmaster who, without doubt, changed the game forever. At the time of his birth, in 1963, the Cold War was in full swing, and the Soviet Union was at the height of its global power. The USSR didn't just dominate in politics and the military, it also ruled the world of chess. In the Soviet Union, chess was more than a game. It was a symbol of intellectual strength, and being good at it meant more than just personal glory. It meant serving the nation. Kasparov was born in Baku, in Azerbaijan, to a Jewish father and an Armenian mother. By the time he was a teenager, it was already clear he was a prodigy. But in a country where competition was fierce and politics often decided who advanced, becoming world champion was no small feat. Kasparov's rise wasn't just about talent, it was also about opportunity. He had been accepted into the Botvinnik Chess School, named after the former world champion and one of the Soviet Union's greatest chess minds. It was there that Kasparov's potential was truly shaped. But success in the Soviet system came with a price. The state controlled travel, training, and tournament access. And for someone as outspoken and fiercely independent as Kasparov, that control was suffocating. Even early in his career, he clashed with Federation officials who tried to block his participation in key matches. But Kasparov pushed back and won.
In the Soviet Union, chess was treated by the Soviet authorities as a very important and useful ideological tool to demonstrate the intellectual superiority of the Soviet communist regime over the decadent West. So that's why the Spassky's defeat, Boris Spassky defeat in 1972, when Bobby Fischer, took the crown from the hands of the Soviet chess school, because since 1948, chess title was firmly in the hands of Soviet players.
By 1984, he had earned the right to challenge the reigning world champion, Anatoly Karpov, a player seen by many as the ideal Soviet sportsman. October 1984, the World Chess Championship begins in Moscow. Inside the Grand Hall of Columns, journalists gather, officials give speeches, and the world watches as the young challenger takes his seat across from the Soviet establishment's golden boy. On the surface, it's just a game. 2 players, 1 board, but beneath the surface, it's a power struggle. Kasparov, just 21, is everything the regime fears. Bold, unpredictable, and impossible to control. The match drags on for months, and while Soviet officials try to maintain a calm facade, behind closed doors, they panic. Kasparov starts gaining ground. Then suddenly, after 48 games, the match is stopped, declared void by the authorities.
Okay, the FIDE described this and tried to justify their decision with these words. They said that they were worried about the player's health, and in one fact they mentioned that Anatoly Karpov lost around 10 pounds while playing the super match against Garry Kasparov. Okay, but even Anatoly Karpov mentioned that he wanted to continue to play this, so I'm not really sure why this happened. So as I said, in my opinion, it was a foolish idea.
In 1985, after the controversial cancellation of their first match, Kasparov and Karpov met again, and this time, there was no stopping him. At just 22, Garry Kasparov became the youngest world chess champion in history. It was a triumph not just over his rival, but over the system that tried to contain him. But for Kasparov, victory wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new battle. He would go on to defend his title multiple times, and throughout the 1990s, dominate the game like no one before him. But in 1993, that dominance reached a breaking point, not on the board, but off it. Kasparov and British Grandmaster Nigel Short had qualified for the World Championship match, but they both accused FIDE, the official World Chess Federation, of corruption, incompetence, and mishandling of the process. Rather than play under FIDE's banner, they broke away, forming a new organization called the Professional Chess Association, PCA. It was an unprecedented move. For the first time in history, the world champion would play outside the authority of FIDE. Kasparov's decision caused a massive rift in the chess world, dividing it into 2 rival camps. From 1993 until the unification in 2006, politics, the chess world would have two world champions and no clear line of succession. For some, Kasparov was a rebel fighting for transparency and fairness. For others, he was undermining the system he once led. But one thing was clear: Kasparov was no longer just playing for titles. Now he was playing to reform the entire game. Kasparov began looking beyond it. He became increasingly outspoken against the political climate in Russia. By 2005, he stepped away from professional chess altogether, and in the years that followed, he emerged not as a grandmaster, but as one of the most prominent voices opposing Vladimir Putin's regime.
You are running in a presidential election, I think you are already the opposition candidate, where your life may literally be on the line. Is that an exaggeration? Do you fear for your life? Do you take precautions?
If you ask me whether my fight against Putin's dictatorship is personal, yes, it is personal. It was more about restoring democracy and defending human rights. I knew I had to do it. I had to try.
While Putin is a center-right conservative politician in the Russian political space, Garry Kasparov is a liberal right-winger who believes that the Russian government should pull out of the economy and introduce as much pro-American liberalism as possible. Kasparov was a Boris Yeltsin supporter. Boris Nikolaevich Yeltsin was a Soviet and Russian politician and statesman who served as president of Russia from 1991 to 1999. Garry was a member of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, and he disagrees with Putin because Putin has reverted or dismantled some of Yeltsin's reforms. Kasparov's political website has been blocked in Russia since 2014 due to his continued calls for civil disobedience and open criticism of Kremlin policies. 2005 was one of the most turbulent years in modern chess history. It wasn't a crisis of war, but of leadership and of identity. The chess world had been divided since the early 90s when Kasparov broke away. He had long accused them of corruption and mismanagement. For over a decade, there were two world champions and two competing visions of what chess should be. But by 2005, that era was coming to a close. And Garry Kasparov, the man who had ruled the board for over 20 years, made a stunning announcement. He declared his retirement from professional chess. But this wasn't the end of his public life. It was the start of something even riskier. Kasparov turned his focus to politics, openly criticizing Vladimir Putin's increasingly authoritarian rule. He helped found opposition groups, organized protests, and campaigned for democratic reform, even as the Russian state worked to silence dissent. Some praised him as a fearless voice for freedom. Others dismissed him as reckless or out of touch with the realities of Russian politics. In 2007, he attempted to run for president, but was blocked from even registering. He was arrested multiple times, and Russian media painted him as a traitor. But Kasparov refused to back down, and though he now lives in exile, his voice remains loud, and his mission clear. Whether on the board or in politics, Garry Kasparov has always been a fighter. This video wasn't made to promote a particular political view. It was made to capture the portrait of a man who, without a doubt, has changed both the game of chess and the meaning of resistance. If you want to support more videos like this, consider subscribing and sharing this story.